Hello and welcome to another episode of Ingamified. I'm your co-host Juan Carlos Blanco. In a minute, I'll be joined by the in-game innovator Eric Sherk. As usual, we're going to break down some more scenarios here from recent NFL action, and Eric's going to highlight where there were some potential profitable in-game handicapping and betting opportunities during week 3 games. So we're going to start right off the bat, Eric, with the 49ers. Brock Purdy's been giving me more and more Tom Brady vibes the more he plays, because the guy is just cool, efficient, kind of a afterthought when he was drafted, and all of a sudden, due to an injury, he gets a chance, and here he goes. So what did you see from him this past week as San Francisco rolled to 3-0 against the Giants?
Man, great call on the Tom Brady. He does kind of have that vibe, almost like a stone cold poker player. There's no pulse, no blood pressure, no nothing. And we love that. He's got those dead eyes. What I call him is I call guys like him and Brady non-blinkers. Like when you see guys blinking like crazy, that means a lot of times they're going to have a rough time in that position. Not always, but anyways.
Ironically, I was going to say he's in the position that Brady ideally probably would have dreamt of, which is in San Francisco, kind of an heir apparent many generations removed to Joe Montana, Brady's favorite player growing up.
It's crazy to think that, ain't it, man? And the funny thing is that if that had gone that way for Brady, we would probably not be talking about Brady right now, because he would have been coached by, at that point, I guess, maybe Mariucci,
right.
Back in the early 2000s. And we know what Mariucci did for Jeff Garcia and Gino Carmazzi and all those guys, like long forgotten. So thank God he went to New England.
Yeah.
But, man, with Purdy specifically, before the game, there was something really cool that happened. And so much of in-game handicapping value is what you find digging into crates in pregame. And in pregame, with no Brandon Ayuk, coming off a week 1, we're talking about passing yards for Purdy. Week 1, he had 220, and week 2, he had 206 passing yards. And going into week 3, once it was announced that Brandon Ayuk was not going to be in that game officially, like the day of or maybe the day before, his over-under for passing yards for Brock Purdy was 235.5. And there's a lot of people cutting in line to take the under. So I go ahead and investigate. It's kind of like the detective before, during, and after the game. We're always investigating the crime. And in this case, what I really understood was that the Giants defense, without the deep threat of Ayuk, could focus 95% or more on stopping McCaffrey in the run game and Elijah Mitchell to boot. And they're not too concerned. If they double Debo, they don't have anybody else to worry about. Who's heard of Ronnie Bell or Jawan Jennings? And Kittle hasn't been doing much. So bottom line, that left medium and deep vulnerability in that Giants defense. And I wanted to confirm that on the field. And with Purdy, basically after the first 3 or 4 plays, noticing that they were passing first and running second, the opportunity was there to go ahead and take him at over 239.5. And I went and locked that in because I confirmed the fact that number was high for a reason, that the sports books understood the philosophy of the Giants defense, willing to stop the run and maybe give up something deep, because they felt there were no deep threats to fear. And they ended up paying the price, and that over 239.5 in game for Purdy ended up cashing in for, what did he have, like 300 plus yards.
Yeah, absolutely. And there again is the importance of thinking a couple layers deep, not just being taken by your first reaction to something. In this case, the Ayuk absence and what have you, and which is what the sportsbook would love you to do. But as you pointed out before many times, that there's where you have to kind of hone your skill as an in-game handicapper to really think through the situation. So moving on to a guy, I'm sure this offseason he was more than happy to get out of New York. He didn't care if Aaron Rodgers, Brady, whoever was coming in to play quarterback there. He just wanted out of there, and he got his wish. Elijah Moore traded to the Browns. Things weren't looking so hot, though, in either scenario, really in the first 2 weeks. But Deshaun Watson kind of came to life here against a very vulnerable pass defense in the Titans in week 3. So how did Moore benefit from that, and what did you see there?
The big thing to me was the eye test in week 2 against the Steelers in that crazy game where Chubb went down. There was a lot going on, and you could tell that there was a trust level with Deshaun Watson and Elijah Moore, even this early in the season. And they kept missing by 1 foot on the sideline, or 1 finger out of 9 fingers on the ball, and not 10, and whatever it might be. The announcers at some point, even in the second half, said, like, man, like they are so close to a home run ball here 3, 4, 5 times in this game. So I investigated again the detective work pregame before their Week 3 matchup against Tennessee. I wanted to really dig in the crates to see what is the stat part of the eye test or beyond the eye test. And what I found was Elijah Moore had 16 targets through 2 weeks, and Amari Cooper had 17 targets. So, I mean, that's not a number 1 and number 2 receiver. As far as I'm concerned, that's 1A and 1B. The only difference was Elijah Moore with his 16 targets only had 6 receptions, and Amari Cooper with his 17 targets had 10 receptions. So what I'm looking at is to see, is there anything that the Tennessee defense might be motivated to do that would allow this trend to continue on the target side? And then at that point, it's up to Watson and Moore to fix it on the reception side. And what I really realized was that not only was the opportunity there for Moore, but the opportunity was there for Watson as well to have a get-right game after really just laying an egg for 2 weeks in the rain game in Week 1 and then falling apart in that second half versus Pittsburgh in Week 2. And the best way to get a get-right game for Watson is quicker, shorter passes versus Tennessee. So let me just wrap it up by saying this. When we look back at the first 5-6 plays of this game, Watson, short right to Peoples, right out of the gate. 2nd and 2, drops back, sacked for -2 yards. 3rd and 4, Watson, pass, short left to Elijah Moore. Short. Even though on the sack play, that was one of those situations where they're obviously showing that they're taking what the Tennessee defense is giving them. And then on the 4th play of that drive, Elijah Moore even gets a run. So Elijah Moore gets 2 touches on the first plays of the game. I go ahead and lock in the over 5.5 for receptions for Moore because it's obvious he's going to be involved. He finishes the game at 9. We only needed 6. That was something that we found the value in the first 2 weeks, and we finally went and cashed in on it in Week 3.
Yeah, and going into that game, as a note, Tennessee was facing the 8th highest pass play percentage from opponents, 62.8%, because they're so good against the run that they were basically forcing teams to just take to the air against them. And so that was another good aspect of that scenario. So excellent point there. And finally, we're looking here at a game that was just one of the stranger ones of the week here this past week with the Packers and the Saints. I mean, Green Bay kind of looked dead in the water at one point, but you've got a point to make about the Green Bay money line as an in-game bet there. So I'm real interested to hear this one.
Yeah, I'll make this as short as I can because I know we're running low on time. So at 2nd and 1, with 5 minutes left in the 4th quarter, this was after they had scored the touchdown and the 2-point conversion. That was very, at the time, a lot of people were like, why the hell are they going for 2? Even myself at first, I was trying to figure out, why are they going for 2 here? And then I realized it's because if they go for 2 here, then they know what they need if they miss it, as where if they want to go for the win on the second touchdown score and they don't get it, they take an L. So they were willing to go for 2 on the first touchdown because they were down 2 touchdowns initially after a field goal. And so at that moment, at 2nd and 1, so they've already got 9 yards on the first play of this drive. There's 5 minutes left in the game. Green Bay is plus 390 on the money line and plus 5.5 on the spread. Well, the way the score lined up at that moment, the only value on the spread would have been 7.5 or better. And obviously the books aren't going to give that out because that means the game could end at that score, and anybody can take Green Bay, who's got all the momentum shift. They could win it without Green Bay having to score again. So without 7.5 or better, there's no need for me or any of us to take that plus 5.5 on the spread. So we take plus 390, and this is what we do. And I'm trying to just go to my notes real quick to say, the only way the plus 5.5 becomes relevant is if the Packers got into field goal range and had a situation where down by 6, they decide to kick a field goal and make it a 3-point game. But here's the difference. If you take the plus 390 and the Packers get into that field goal range, you have the opportunity to either take a cash out when it becomes more likely that they may kick a field goal, or if the cash out isn't available, you can bet 1 unit on the other side on the money line on Tennessee, which at that point, when they got into field goal range, and obviously they scored a touchdown to win the game, but at that moment, Tennessee was down to like minus 145. So even if you don't have a cash out, you could still get out of this bet by betting 1 unit on Tennessee and still guarantee yourself a profit. You might have to bet like a 1.1 units or 1.2 units, whatever it is, to lock in a profit. But by taking the plus 5.5, you're basically throwing away another 3 units of profit at almost 4-1 at plus 390. Why wouldn't you take that if you can still get out of it when the only thing that can beat you is a field goal? And you wouldn't be able to take that on 3rd down. You would have to basically gauge that on what they did on 1st down when they were close to field goal range. And maybe right as they run their 2nd down play, if there's any thought that they're going to have a 3rd and long before the field goal is evident, then you can go ahead and get out of that plus 390. That's something I rarely do, but I was willing to do that extra work to try to cash in almost 4 units of profit rather than go for the standard 1 unit of profit with the plus 5.5.
Absolutely. And I'll just make one quick correction here as an umbrella correction. When you were saying Tennessee, folks, he meant New Orleans because we still have Tennessee on the brain from the previous game that we were talking about. But yeah, the Saints, everything else Eric said obviously applies to the situation. It was just the Saints that we were talking about as Green Bay's opponent in that one. So with that, we're going to just wrap that up for this week. Another lightning round of great information from Eric as usual. For Eric and myself, Juan Carlos Blanco, we'll see you next time on Ingamified.